Hello and welcome to the maiden edition of Vertex Points, a program designed and tailored towards political activities, situations and events around the world. Vertex Points is a point where two or more curves, lines or edges meet from an angle or the corners. Today on Vertex Points, we're looking at issues around Somaliland's recognition. To provide insight into the subject matter, we have Carlo Parcelli, a man with an eagle eyes. Carlo is a lifetime student of U.S. foreign policy as well as an accomplished poet, a man who elaborates in great details his insight. He has also written numerous articles and now he is a content to watch. The earth scribble its own apocalyptic epic in real time. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Vertex Point.
In 1960, Somaliland emerged independent from the British Empire.
What we've seen is last year Somaliland celebrated 30 years of the Declaration of Independence.
Externally, that dream and that vision of actually creating their own homeland once again, re-establishing those old territorial borders.
Isn't it time, in his view, that the UK government formally recognise their right to self-determination and recognise their need to be an independent state?
Yeah. Would you not agree with me that recognising the Somalilanders here in the UK is about also recognising our own past and our own future together as investors in a new Africa and demonstrators that independent states that govern themselves well in democracies can really succeed and we can partner with them.
All right, viewer, without further ado, let's quickly join Carlo Parcelli on this subject matter.
Okay, so I'm flattered.
Now, Carlo, it's good to have you join us once again on the show. Today, we're looking at Somaliland recognition. Now, 30 years of secession from Somalia since 1991. The country has been experiencing democratic transition of government from one time to another without any hitch. Now, Somaliland has its government. The country has its own money. It has its own territory. It has almost everything to actually determine a country, yet unrecognized. What do you think the country is lacking? Do you think that the country deserves to be recognized?
There's standard criteria. I'm no expert on the issue, but certainly from my perspective, Somaliland fulfills all of the basic criteria for nationhood or statehood to be an independent country. It certainly has a stable population. It has a stable geography, area in which it operates. It has a stable government. It has all the criteria for, and economically, it also it has its own currency. So it matches all the criteria for being its own nation. My only concern, and we'll take this up in the later questions, is how it's choosing to go about achieving that nationhood and the people it's bringing on board internationally to accomplish that goal. I think there's some real hard questions that have to be asked. But go ahead.
For any country to actually experience a real-time development, it must be recognized internationally. So what are those criteria there that a country should, have before it can be recognized?
Well, I don't know how to address that directly. Let me just leap a little bit to the question of whether the African Union, what role it should play in nationhood for Somaliland. Now that we understand that Somaliland has met all the basic criteria, I think given the fact that Somaliland has allied itself with the United States and the former colonizer, Great Britain, as this would be my opinion, would be that the African Union is less likely to step in and aid Somaliland in its efforts, because especially U.S. foreign policy in Africa has been devastating over a long period of time, and of course the British have a long history too.
Thank you so very much. Now here is it. Now the country is yet to be recognized, yet we have U.S. representative in the Horn of Africa. We have U.S. office in Somalia as well as Somaliland. Now, as a British protectorate, Somaliland has a British office, a representative office in Somaliland. What do you make of this?
Why are these people interested, both the British and the Americans, why are they interested in Somaliland? Well, I'll tell you why they're interested in Somaliland. Because of the port and airstrip of Berbera. That's why, and that's their sole interest. You have a deep water port, and you have an airstrip, and they don't care. They don't care, I'm going to be frank about this. They don't care about the people of Somaliland, the Americans and the English. What they care about is their oil interest in Yemen. And that they want, and elsewhere in the Middle East. And that's why also the UAE is deeply involved in other Arab interests because of the oil connection and the Gulf of Aden. And if you recall, back in the late 1980s, early 1990s, it was Hunt Oil that was the one who found oil in Somalia. Now, at the time, we had a bookstore, and I remember I put an article up in my store from the Covert Action Information Bulletin, which is now the Covert Action Magazine. I put an article up in my store about U.S. representatives staying at an oil compound in Somalia. Well, a State Department official was shopping in my store, and he chastised me for putting that article up. He insisted there was no oil in Somalia, and I should mind my own business. That's the way America works. Mind my own business.
Thank you very much. Now, let's get to the real issue now. The hot point here is the fact that on the 18th of last month, there was a serious big debate in the House of UK Parliament about Somaliland recognition, with Gavin Williamson leading that campaign. Do you think this can actually happen, or does it portend a good omen for Somaliland to have that self-determination?
That was the question that threw me the most when you sent me the questions. Let me just say one thing. Williamson and the Tories, to me, they're very similar to the Americans and who are behind you. And it's interesting because Mr. Goff gave a speech before the Jackson Hole, and you know what Jackson Hole is? That's where Dick Cheney lives. Dick Cheney basically owns Jackson Hole. It's the same thing. You're going to find London and New York, the big money, two of the big money capitals in the world, see a profit. Not only profit in constructing this enormous project in Berbera, but in being able to secure their interests in Yemen, and also in the region, in Somaliland and Somalia, Djibouti, the entire region. Now they're scared to death of China's Silk Road Initiative, the Belt and Road Initiative, and they want to retake that old colonial dimension back. But the problem they have is for places like Somaliland to become part of them, they have to be assured it's going to be on their terms, on the old colonializing terms, whereas China doesn't care. The negative rap on China is, well, they don't care if you're a dictatorship. Well, the fact of the matter is, neither does the United States, or they wouldn't be so buddy-buddy with Saudi Arabia.
Now, Carlo, listen to this. I get your point. I get your point. But going back to the question, now here is a serious debate that is covered worldwide, almost everywhere. The news is everywhere. You know, it's rented air, and of course, Somaliland, both home, Somalilanders, home and in diaspora, actually, you know, were excited about the news about the second time of this kind of debate since 2001, actually, to be precise. Now, do you think that this would lead to something positive with respect to the subject matter, you know, Somaliland recognition?
No, well, the only thing that I called from thinking about that question in both the British and the American terms was they're not going to do anything, neither the Brits nor the Americans, because they're afraid that there are many other places in Africa and throughout the world, for that matter, that would see that as a something to approach to gain their own nationhood, to advance their own interests in becoming a country, and that they would become supplicants to the British and the Americans. They constantly be looking toward them to support their own nationhood, because they too would meet the criteria that Somaliland has met. And I have to say, from all of my reading and looking, you guys have done a wonderful job. I mean, I can find nothing really, no serious negative, and you can't say that about a lot of places. But for me, that's all the more reason to wonder why you're only being offered a national security agreement, which is only militarily based and has no economic function except around that military arrangement. I think that it will just be kind of exploitation by, well, that's just the way we do business.
Now, there you go. Now, here comes yet another very vital point. Now, when we speak of those things that will speed up the process of this recognition that we're talking about, Somaliland is also a member state, you know, in Africa. Yet, the African Union is there, not really showing any concern about these issues around recognition. Do you think AU, African Union to be precise, has a role to play in speeding up this process?
It's not what it can play, it's what it will play. And you brought up ECOWAS. Well, there have been several initiatives really led by the Nigerians. There are 262 million people in Nigeria. That's a potential powerhouse, and they attempted to. I think there was a dispute in Guinea-Bissau, and they brought ECOWAS in to settle it. Well, the United States went in and just tossed that, made a mess of it, and they've made a mess of several of ECOWAS's initiatives. Plus, the United States has sponsored coups all across the Sahel, where the Chinese want to build this railway system to Mali from Sudan. The U.S. has gone in and they've couped, with the exception of Chad. Actually, it's an indirect coup. They've couped every country in that region. They've couped Guinea. They've couped Mali. They've couped Sudan. They've couped and they couped Niger. So, what incentive is there to help Somaliland gain nationhood when they're aligning themselves with the very people that are destroying their continent and have for a long time destroyed? I can remember when Lumumba was assassinated. You know, I can remember Thomas Sankara. He'd be rolling over his grave with this latest coup, U.S.-sponsored coup. You know, so why would they bother? Go do what if you wanna lie down with those vipers in England and the United States, go lie down with them, but don't include us in it. I think if I were in a position of authority in any one of those African countries that's been destabilized by the United States, never by the Chinese, never by the Russians, that's the tact I would take. Screw you. You're going to go along. I mean, Taiwan, recognizing Taiwan, that's stupid. The Chiang Kai-shek and the Kuomintang never gave a rat's ass about whether their people could eat. They didn't care. They were tools of the West, very clearly so. When they entered Formosa, they murdered 30,000 Formosans. That was their first thing they did. They murdered the entire hierarchy.
Without missing out any point, you've said quite a lot about what is actually holding Somaliland down from being recognized internationally. What are your recommendations? What are the things that you feel that the country can do to achieve this in a shortest distance time?
Two. One's an easy one to spell, OIL. And the second one is you tipped your hand. Somaliland people, the people in charge, tipped their hand when they took the DT proposal for this the Deepwater Port and the airstrip. The first one, oil. Let's take South Sudan. Why did the CIA go to such great lengths to foment, destabilize Sudan, and then peel off South Sudan? Answer simple. And now South Sudan is embroiled in its own civil war. It's also being used, the CIA, to destabilize Ethiopia, which is one in turn mended its disagreements with Eritrea and so on and so forth, so that they can. Ethiopia is looking for access to the Gulf. That's what they need. They're landlocked otherwise. And I understand that they're talking with Djibouti for all. No. They're talking with you guys, Somaliland, with the possibility of getting access to the Gulf of Aden. So, but the oil is the key. So it has to do with natural resources. With if they could do it by creating by helping someone like achieve nationhood, which is an extreme example, it's usually one of two ways. It's either by putting in place a dictatorship, or a like Pinochet in Chile, or all over. You go all over the world. I mean, you had the baby doc and Papa Doc in Haiti for years, and you can put in that kind of dictatorship that the U.S. backs, and they'll give the international and the U.S. business community, they'll give Wall Street what they want. Or if they can't do that, they'll invade. They'll invade like they've done all over the world. I mean, with Syria, the destabilization there, and see, that's the name of the game. If you can destabilize it, and then you look for the advantage that you have after. That's what they did with Syria. That's what they're doing with Libya. And push comes to shove, that might be what they do with Somalia. And they might, you might get your nationhood, and then find the next week the United States is trying to destabilize your new nation.
Thank you so very much, Carlo. You've raised quite a number of points that could be looked into one after the other. Now, without missing out any point, you've said quite a lot about what is actually holding Somaliland down from being recognized internationally. What are your recommendations? What are the things that you feel that the country can do to achieve this in a shortest distance time?
You're not going to achieve nationhood through the United States and Britain anytime soon, unless they see some advantage in it for themselves. And I don't see any further advantage on the horizon than what they've already gained. through the Berbera port and airstrip. I don't think China will really press for nationhood for Somaliland. It's not in their nature to do that. It's in their nature to let what exists on the ground stay. Not only that, they're furious over Somaliland's recognition of Taiwan. They're just absolutely furious about it. It's a very sore point with them, and so I don't see a very clear path. I think it's going to be a long haul, unless somehow you can get the UN to step in, and I think the UN would immediately I think you're going to have to bypass the African Union. I think the UN would be your best bet.
Carlo Parcelli there, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate you. Well, that has been Vertex Points from CBA TV. We hope you've picked one or two things. This is a platform where we look at international issues, issues around politics, and so much more. Thank you for joining the program, and rest assured that we'll come your way another time. My name remains Ajara Ahmed Tijani. Do have a wonderful time and keep connecting the dots.